Welcome to the Fantasy Baseball Beat, part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Torres. I'll be your host today. Here today with Dave Funnell. Mike Carter can't join us. We miss you, buddy. But Dave is with me here today, and we are also very happy to be joined by Detroit Tigers beat writer for MLB.com, Jason Beck. Very happy to have him back on the show. So we're gonna get right to it. We'll talk to you in a sec, Dave. But let's bring in Jason. I think this is his third time on the show, so we always appreciate him being so gracious with his time. Jason, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing well, thanks.
Good.
So we got to start with, I think, the biggest story for the Tigers this year, and that is TARIK SKUBAL, who's just been incredible this year. He's one of the front runners, if not the front runner, for the AL Cy Young. I think it'll be, as of right now, looks like a nice race between him and my guy, Carlos Rodon. But SKUBAL right now is a 2.26 ERA to go along with a 0.79 whip. He's an absolutely absurd 32% K- walk percentage this season. So tell us, Jason, what has it been like covering SKUBAL this year? And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about SKUBAL the person, and what he's like off the field, and a little bit about maybe his work ethic, preparation, what makes him so special and so unique.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like covering Verlander in 2011 and 2012 when he was dominating. Especially lately where, you're kind of wondering where that first base hit's going to come from, or if you're going to be covering a no-hit bid. He took a perfect game into the, sixth inning twice in a three-start span. And, they, like you guys mentioned, the strikeout to walk ratio is ridiculous right now. He just seems to be willing for good reason to challenge hitters, and hitters have a really hard time tracking it right now. The Maddox he threw with 13 strikeouts was ridiculous, and
Unbelievable.
it's fun to watch. Covering him, he's I guess the best description is he's basically the same guy that I remember when he was coming up through the minor leagues, and that's not an easy thing to do when you come into stardom like he has, especially as quickly and suddenly as it came for him. This is still a hardworking guy. Definitely not a superstar type of guy, but I do think he's enjoying being at the top of his game right now. You see, he's become a pretty familiar presence on the Detroit sports scene, both obviously as a pitcher, but also as a fan. He went to a couple Lions games last season. He was spotted on, courtside of the Michigan State basketball game last year. And, he enjoys kind of being that type of player who supports other athletes in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
He really is one of the
If
best.
I could just follow up real quickly, Dave, I was just wondering, do you think the Tigers take any type of precaution with SKUBAL this season? I know he came off the injury 2 years ago, built back up his innings last year. Do you think there's anything that they're going to do to kind of keep him healthy or keep him, fresh for a potential postseason run? Or is he just, the leash is off and they're going to let him go?
Well, yeah, you kind of see them doing it here and there with, making sure when they have a chance, they can give them an extra day's rest whenever possible. It's not always easy, but, you've seen them sprinkle in a bullpen game here and there. They did one Tuesday against the White Sox. They ended up losing that one, but I think he's pitched more often on 5 days rest than 4 days rest this season, and I think you'll see that continue when it's feasible. With some of the injuries in the rotation, it's become a little bit of a challenge. Getting a start from GIPSON-LONG kind of helped out here, but yeah, I think it'll become easier once they get Reese Olson back in the rotation, and then if they can get a healthy Jackson Jobe back for the second half at some point, I think that would make a big difference.
Dave, I know you must have been cringing. Dave covers injuries for us, and he's like always on top of, the latest news. And Dave, you must have been cringing when you saw that 102-mile-an-hour pitch he threw at the end of that amazing start that he had. I mean, that was just next level. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
hopefully,
outstanding.
yeah.
But yeah.
Let me pass it to you. I know you wanted to ask about Sawyer Gipson-Long here.
Yeah, you mentioned him earlier, and he's someone in the fantasy game that we've been waiting for, because a lot of us still remember, the excellent skills that he displayed at the end of 2023. Now, he had his first start back on Wednesday, which was a little uneven. I mean, he went 3 2/3 innings and gave up 3 runs. But what do you think is the Tigers' plan for him, and what are the chances he sticks in the rotation?
Well, I think he's going to stick, for now until they, get a little bit more, definition on, how quickly Reese Olson can get back. Reese is still kind of having a slow progression back from the right ring finger injury. He was throwing bullpens, but he wasn't able to throw that changeup because of the inflammation in there. He got an injection. Either over the weekend or early this week to try to get the remaining inflammation out of there, and was supposed to start playing catch at some point any day now. From there, he's got to build up. He's going to need at least a rehab start, maybe two, to get back to readiness. So he's probably 2 3 weeks away, I would imagine, um, at least. So, but yeah, I can also see them being cautious with him to try to make sure it's not a lengthier absence. No, it's not an arm injury, but that type of finger injury and the impact it has on his changeup, which has been his most effective pitch, you know, they're going to want to make sure that's not a long-term concern for him.
Mhm.
Um, so for now, I would think that Sawyer's going to get a long leash and a long look to see what he can do over, the next few turns in rotation, if not longer. It is worth noting that the Tigers moved Troy Melton, their, one of their better pitching prospects, from Double A to Triple A Toledo. In fact, he made his Mud Hens debut tonight. I think that's worth noting. Maybe not on the radar right away, but I think if there are pitching needs down the stretch, he could fit into their picture there. There's a
Mm.
lot to like about his stuff, and what he's done in terms of strikeouts tonight in Columbus, I think is worth noting.
All right,
Okay.
good little nugget there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, the playing time for the Tigers right now seems to be a bit of a mess. And to be clear, it's a mess for us, right? Us fantasy gamers. We're trying to figure out, who to start. And then we see guys losing playing time, and things are just kind of all over the place with the Tigers specifically. How do you think things shake out here? I mean, now you've got Parker Meadows back. You've got Baez, who's bouncing all over the infield. Wenzel Perez seems to be kind of an everyday guy. Torque even lost a few starts last week, but I assume he's an everyday guy. McKinstry's playing all over. So ultimately, like, how do you see this all shaking out with all of these pieces?
Uh, it's one of those where when AJ's going to play, has a chance to play matchups, he's going to play them.
Mhm.
Really, the only guys I think are can reasonably be considered like everyday guys are Riley Green, McKinstry. Um, Wenzel's close to that point. I think Dylan Dingler has established himself as the primary catcher right now.
Mhm.
And then Glaber and maybe Torque. And the rest of the guys are kind of mix and match. Now, if Colt Keith ends up getting some starts at third base, that could move him closer to everyday time. But I think he's still a guy who's going to be kind of mix and match against lefties, depending on the type of lefty that the Tigers are facing on a given night. But it really is a mishmash. It's especially with Parker Meadows back in center field. You could reasonably see Javi taking a bit of playing time away from Trey Sweeney at short.
Mhm.
And that's even before you mix in Zach McKinstry. So there's a lot of mixing and matching going on here, which is what AJ likes to do. And as you see more of these up and down performances offensively from the team, I think that's only going to enhance the mixing and matching that you see AJ doing.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, right? For AJ Hinch, they've got a lot of pieces and a lot to move around. And mixing and matching has been the theme of the bullpen too. I know. Let me pass it to Dave for a question regarding that.
Yeah, mixing and matching indeed, because quite honestly, fantasy community, picking closers is hard to do, and Detroit's up there making it interesting for us. But it seems like Will Vest is getting a larger share of the closing duties in the past few weeks. Do you think that trend continues in that direction? And are there any rumblings about the Tigers possibly making a move to bring in a more proven closer?
I think the Tigers will look for bullpen help at the deadline. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be one of those lockdown, trust him in the ninth inning all the time closers. That's not how AJ likes to use his bullpen. I think even if they get a guy who fits for the ninth inning, that doesn't mean you're going to see him in the ninth inning all the time.
Yeah.
If they face a dangerous lineup and the middle of the order comes up in the eighth, that guy could end up pitching eighth. We've seen Will Vest doing that a fair share. We've seen Tommy Canley doing that, which is why neither of those guys has really kind of established a stronghold on the closer's role. I think AJ likes having those options, and I think he looks at the point in the order as much or more than he looks at what inning they are in. But I do think Will Vest has established himself as the high leverage guy in this bullpen, with the way he's throwing
Yeah.
and the way he's been able to get outs. Canley's got a lot of that too, but you've seen a little bit more battle with control on Canley's part.
Mhm.
You kind of saw that today against the White Sox again too, with the 4 pitch walk. So, I think Will's your most likely source for saves more often than not going forward here.
Yeah, he's been excellent. Even has shipped in 5 wins, with a really good ratio. So for those of us that spent up on Will Vest to pick him up in our leagues, that has worked out pretty well. Quickly on the deadline, this was a question from our friend Marty Tallman. He wanted us to ask, what's up, Marty? Uh, how aggressive do you think the Tigers are going to be at the deadline, and what exactly do you think they might be in the market for?
Well, a lot of it depends on how you see this team playing for the next month to 6 weeks.
Mhm.
I think with all the injuries that have been going on, we haven't seen what this team looks like at full strength and how Parker Meadows fits into this plan. Um, I think these next few weeks are going to be a better gauge as far as like what the Tigers really need. Bullpen, I think, is going to be something they're going to be looking for because, not just for the lack of definition of closer, but I think you've kind of seen like there's been a heavy workload on some guys, whether it's Will Vest, Tyler Holden has certainly borne the brunt of duties as far as like top lefty option, and the innings have piled up on him. I think that you've seen them use Canely quite a bit. I think they would like to add another option there for high leverage situations to kind of help ease the burden on them. Yeah, I think Bill Brisky has struggled here since his return from injury, and they have to try to get him right, or else they might need somebody to fill that role. Which is he played a very underrated role for this team in their charge down the stretch last year. Um, Offensively, third base is an obvious opening. If they could get some stability there, that would be a big help. Yes, they could end up using some combination of Javi Baez, Colt Keith, and Zach McKinstry there. But if an opportunity presents itself to get somebody more established there, I think they would take a serious look at it. Obviously we saw I think a lot of us saw the Bo Bichette rumor thrown out there. I don't know how much they would want to spend on a rental player like that. I think ideally anybody they would get would be under control for this year and next if they were going to give up serious
Yeah.
prospects.
Mhm.
But they do have a depth in their farm system and they have a chance to be fairly aggressive on the market. I don't think it's going to be, a huge makeover offensively. I think they like the way this team has been able to play from an offensive standpoint this year. But, you know, if they could if they could get somebody like Nolan Arenado and convince him on the idea of being in Detroit long term, it would make some sense.
Yeah, that would make sense.
What's the vibe around the Jackson Jobe injury? And do you think there's a chance maybe we see him before the All-Star break?
Uh, the typical timetable for that, even a mild flexor strain, suggests that it would be right around the All-Star break, maybe
Mhm.
shortly after. I haven't seen anything yet. They're kind of prescribing rest for now, and then they'll see how the arm responds. But given how important he is in their plans, short and long term, I think they're going to be extra cautious with him. So, honestly, I would be surprised if we see him, much, if we see an aggressive timetable on him. I think,
Mhm.
given how like the Mariners played a similar injury there, um, that, Job is more likely to come back right around the All-Star break.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
All right. One final question for you, Jason, so we can get you out of here. But I'm wondering, just for you, what has it been like to cover this team this year? You've had some lean years. You had some good years during your time covering the team, but recently, they made the run last year, which no one expected, which was pretty awesome. But what has it been like for you personally? Any favorite moments or stories that you've written from this season so far?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. One of the nice things about covering this team is having covered, it's a lot of it's homegrown. So a lot of these players who are becoming stars now have come up through the system, and I remember covering them in the minor leagues. So that's been very nice to do, and it's been kind of a key difference from the teams, from the '06 World Series team and the 2012 World Series team, which
Mhm.
was, had a lot of guys come in from the outside, aside from like Curtis Granderson and Verlander. But watching Riley Green blossom, watching Torque blossom, SKUBAL we talked about, that's been a really fun part about this club. And I think it's been one of the things that's been underrated about this club is that since a lot of these guys came up through the system together, there's kind of an inherent chemistry. And,
Mhm.
that's been, I think, a key point in why this team has been able to embrace what could be construed as an unselfish style of play in terms of, aggressive base running, the platoons, the role playing, setting the table for the guy behind you in the lineup. A lot of that comes because a lot of these guys have known each other since shortly after the draft, since coming up through Lakeland and Erie and West Michigan and Toledo. So that makes a difference with a team like this. I don't know if you get that type of buy-in if you brought in a collective group of free agents and trade acquisitions. That
Mhm.
you know, there's a built-in chemistry with this club that would be hard to duplicate with a bunch of guys coming in from the outside.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Seems like a really fun club to cover. Okay, I lied. One last thing, because you brought up, these guys coming up the minor leagues. Give me one name of someone who is in the minor leagues currently, who some maybe they like someone who's playing a dynasty league, that they should be paying attention to. A player whose stock you think has really risen this past season.
I mean, the top guys, Max Clark and Kevin McGonigal, justifiably get a lot of attention, and I think they're going to be on the radar starting next season. But Josue Porcino, what he's doing at West Michigan right now bears attention. He is absolutely mashing the ball in a ballpark that is hard to hit home runs in. He's showing a ton of raw power, and while also combining that with a fairly good batting average and the ability to hit the ball out to all fields. And if he continues doing this, he could move fairly aggressively, um, and push to move up to the upper levels of the farm system this year, and then maybe knock on the door of Detroit at some point next season, which would be fun to see. Because this is the type of guy who would have a lot of fantasy baseball appeal, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, Josue Briseño. That's how you say it, right?
Yes.
All right, so a name to keep in mind. But Jason, always great nuggets, great information. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Please, if you could tell our listeners where they could find your work and where they could find you on social media.
Yeah, so I'm on tigers.com writing there, and I'm also on Blue Sky and on Threads at Beck Jason.
All right, awesome stuff. Well, thank you again, and hope to talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Good night, Jason. We are back with our fantasy follow-up segment. So for today's segment, Dave and I are gonna be taking a look at our best and worst performing fantasy teams so far this season, and just gonna have an open discussion about maybe things that have gone right so far, what's gone wrong. Also look at maybe ways that we can improve these teams. So, Dave, let me hear. Let's start with the bad. Let's start with your worst team, and let's see. Maybe we could come up with some ideas on how you can fix it.
Okay. My worst non-niche team, meaning it's just a standard team, standard league. It's right now it's my TGFBI.
All right.
So it's a 15-team league, 2 catcher. I'm in 8th, so it's not too bad, but I got a lot of injuries going on right now. I've been unlucky with that, even though I'm the one who's supposed to help people avoid these injuries.
Yeah, what the
I
heck,
seem to
man?
be
I mean, come on, you're more on top of this than anybody.
I
How did
know,
this
I
happen?
know. But I've got so right now on my bench, we'll start with my bench. Varsho's out, Santander's out. I tried stashing Ha-Seong Kim. He's out, obviously. Mountcastle on the IL, and I've been stashing Arrighetti all season long, but I might need a spot for him.
Okay, so this is no IL. So
no IL.
Okay.
There's
So
no
like
IL.
NFBC format, you have 7 bench spots.
Yeah.
And no IL. Okay.
Now, every week when I go to set my lineup, I like what I see. So help me out and tell me what I'm doing wrong, okay?
Let's do it.
2 catchers, both Atlanta catchers. So
Okay.
I think I'm good there. First base, Wilson Contreras. Second base, you're going to hate it, Luis Ariz. Shortstop, Mookie Betts. Third base, Isaac Paredes. Outfield, I've got Julio, Burleson, Bellinger, Ramos. I got Cam Smith. And then I've got Ben Rice as my corner, Jacob Wilson as my middle. And right now it's Nolan Gorman as my utility.
Okay. All right. So that team doesn't sound that bad. I mean, you said you're in 8th place, so you're middle of the pack, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. It's not. So there are a few kind of weak spots that I see there. Gorman, I don't know. Even in a 15 teamer, I don't know if there's enough there to justify, him being like a part of your regular lineup. I think the playing time, I dropped him weeks ago. So I honestly, I don't know if the playing time has picked up since then, but I remember like he was losing playing time. And even when he was playing, he really wasn't doing too much. The power hasn't been there like it's been in years past. Cam Smith is also, I guess he's turning it around a little bit. Yeah, so I guess he's fine in a 15 teamer. But yeah, I mean, you have Jacob Wilson. I mean, that dude has been. Let's talk about him for a sec. That guy's a stud. Another home run today. He's batting like 360, even chipping in some stolen bases. I got him in a lot of spots. Never in a million years did I think we'd get this from him. I thought it was more like a Luis Arias profile.
I don't even think Jacob Wilson thought he would be doing this year.
No. I mean, he's legit. Like, I mean, I think he's going top 75. If we drafted right now, he's probably going top 75. So
Yeah.
he has been awesome. So yeah, your offense isn't that bad. So I have a feeling your pitching is not great though.
Well, it's not great because I think it's because they've underperformed. Here's what I have.
Well,
And
yeah.
there's one that you're just going to question what the hell I'm doing. Dylan Cease, Zach Gallen, Zebby Matthews, George Kirby, Bubich, and Ranger Suarez are my starters.
Okay.
And I got Munoz, Jeff Hoffman, and right now, because I took a chance on him, but he's not going to do anything, Jorge Lopez. And I only have him there because I don't have any other pitchers and because I got outbid this week.
Okay. All right. So he was the guy you planned to drop, but
Yeah.
then you just didn't put in. I hate that. I hate that
Uh-huh.
when you have a player on your team, like whether it's an injured guy or a guy that just sucks, and you plan to drop him. I've had this where I've had like 8 bids in, with that player as the drop, and I get none of the 8 players, and I'm stuck looking at that whoever it is, looking at that guy for a whole week. Drives me nuts. But anyway, so you got Jorge Lopez. He's gone.
Yeah.
Your pitching, I mean, the Kirby thing, I just feel like has been a bad beat. And that's a huge hit, right? You probably took him in the second round.
Yeah, second or third, but yeah.
It was so like your SP1, like it's just been bad. And then even like the fact he came back after the injury and he's still understandably, right? He never had a spring training, like he's ramping up.
That's what it is.
We're doing it in the major leagues, and in the process, killing your ratios. This is not typical George Kirby. So that's a huge blow when you have a pitcher like that who you're depending on. And you said you had Bubich, which obviously has been awesome. Suarez injured for a while, has come back and looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Who was your SP2?
It was Dylan Cease.
Okay.
He's
uneven. I mean, he's been a little disappointing. Very disappointing actually for where you took him. His ERA is high 4s, and every time you think he's about to go on a run, he just never. I don't know. There's always something a little bit off with him. So
yeah. So I had Kirby and Cease. I think I went back to back in like the second or third. It was back to back. So to lose out on both of those guys right away, that's.
Yeah. I think that's probably the crux of your issue there. But the good news is I think eventually Kirby is going to round back into form, and I think the underlying numbers for Cease are better than what the surface numbers have been. So once you get those guys going, I imagine your ratios will get a little bit straightened out. I think this team, listen, get rid of Nolan Gourmet. Try to find an upgrade there. I mean, that's a util spot. You can, I think, do that in Fab.
Yeah.
And I think this team is not that bad. I think it has a chance to, at least cash top 3. So
okay. I feel a lot better.
Not bad. All right. So let me start with my worst team. And this has just been such a oh man. So right now I'm in 8th place. I have a streak, Dave. I have a streak. I've played in the main event for 4 years now, and I've only done one team a year, and everyone is cashed. I won one league, second, 2/3. And my plan, so I did 2 mains this year, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take my shot and see what I can do with the 2 entries.
Okay.
So one of them has just been a bit of a mess, and I'm just like looking at some of these picks that I made, and I'm just kicking myself like, what was I thinking? So all right, you're gonna hate this. So I think I showed this draft to you when I first did it, and I don't think you said anything, which to me meant that this team is terrible. And because you're the most positive, nice guy, you always find something nice to say.
All right, I'm here to say something. Let's do it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm like, was I on drugs, man? Like, what was I thinking? I had this thing where I have this thing where I get FOMO, like most people, right? But
Mhm.
like I do a lot of drafts. I start drafting in November, doing all these DCs and everything. And so I look at it kind of like a portfolio, and I have my shares of these players. This draft that I did was my final draft of the year. And it became kind of like a FOMO draft because
Mm.
there were guys that had risen up draft boards that I was kicking myself for not getting earlier in draft season.
Yep.
And I didn't have any shares. And I'm like, oh, I can't go into the season without any shares. And one guy that I did that with, unfortunately, was Spencer Strider. I chased him up. I'm embarrassed to say this. I took him at the end of the 3rd round. Because and this was someone who, like, during DC season, you could get like pick 125. But we had, he was going to beat his timeline, right? All the reports and training in spring training were good. So I'm like, oh, we're getting Spencer Strider in the 3rd. Like, this was a guy we were taking top 3 last year,
Yeah.
But I, for some reason, forgot to realize that Spencer Strider, immediately coming off of this surgery, like the chances that we get vintage Strider are not that high, and that has played out. It's been, I'm really concerned about him. Like the velocity is down. The command doesn't seem to be there. Like I watched him pitch one game, and I'm like, this doesn't look great. He's a 2-pitch guy, and there's a big difference between him throwing 95 and 98, 99. He's sitting in like that 95 range and looked very hittable.
Mhm.
So I'm pretty concerned. He also had the hamstring injury. So that one is just, what am I going to do? Like I'm going to have to start him every week. I don't have any better options, but I might just have to go down with the ship. I'm not sure if we get, a turnaround there. On this team, I also had Logan Gilbert, 2nd round pick. That one, I think, kind of like Kirby's, just been a little bit of a bad beat.
Yep.
He was considered like the safest guy, or one of the safest guys, next to maybe Zach Wheeler, as far as the top end pitchers. And obviously, he goes down with the injury. So, not a whole lot I could do there, but that's obviously been a huge blow. I also did the FOMO thing with Clay Holmes and chased him up the board
Mm.
because he was getting all that helium in spring training. I remember I watched him, one of his outings against the Nationals in spring training, and dude struck out everybody. I'm like, oh my God, Clay Holmes is a fantasy ace, and like, I didn't consider like, oh, the guy's never done this before, right? He's going to have to make a transition to doing this every 5 days, when he's never really done this in his major league career. And he's been fine, but I think we're seeing the underlying skills they're showing some warts, right? He's not really getting swing and miss. He's starting to walk guys. Maybe there's some fatigue setting in. So I'm also concerned about that one. And he's my SP3. So I have Gilbert, Strider, and Holmes as my top 3
Oh.
pitchers.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
that's not a good trio
Yeah.
to be leading my staff right now. I thankfully I have Drew Rasmussen, Chris Bubich. They've kind of kept me afloat. But I think I'm really gonna have to, I don't know. Like I may have to go after a Yuri, or just go all in on one of these pitchers coming back off the IL, and hope I strike gold, because I think I'm short in the rotation. I also have a Willie Adames on this team. Oh my God, what do you have Adames anywhere?
I don't. No.
Holy cow! Like I look at the box score every day, and I'm like, bro, do you do anything? Like nothing. No hits, no stolen bases, no home runs. I think he's
And
batting under 200, right around 200 right now. It's been so brutal. But again, like, what do I do? I don't have a better option. And every week he projects well, right? Because he's playing every day, and the projections say he should be this level of hitter. It's just not happening. And I don't know what to do, man. Tatis I have on this team. He's been really good overall, but a lot of that production came in early in the year. So like, since he's fallen off, like I feel like this team hasn't hit a home run in like 2 weeks. It's been in total free fall. So right now I'm in 8th place with 80 points. not dead, but on the precipice of being dead. Oh, and I don't have a second closer. Throw that in there because Luke Weaver just went on the IL.
Pick you while you're down.
So yeah, other than that, the team looks great. I have no second closer. My 3 starting pitchers suck. I can't hit home runs, but it's it's all good. It's all good.
I mean, at least Logan Gilbert might be back within a week. You got that going for you.
I got that going for me. I got Andrew Benintendi and that ugly mug to look at every week.
Oh,
I can't stand him. Why did I pick him up?
why did you pick him?
Man. All right. Anyway, let's shift the vibes. Let's shift the vibes.
Okay.
Now I'm all worked up here. Tell me something good. Tell me something good, Dave. Tell me about your best team.
All right. My best team right now, and it's only 6, but last week I was in second. So give or take, I'm around where I should be. It's another TGFBI. It was like a TGFBI prep league by Martin Sikulski. Great guy. So this team, it's actually doing pretty well. Knock on wood. I thought I did pretty well in the draft, and I've been like low bidding to get, additions here and there. I think I've been pretty lucky with that. But you want me to run through the team? I can do that. I've got Wilson.
Well, give me the biggest hits that you have on that team.
Okay. My boy Jonathan Aranda, corner infield.
You love him. I mean, I remember you've been talking about him like all off season, or you were talking about him.
I have
no surprise
you
got
him.
He's
I made off-season trades for him. It's working out. Knock on wood. But it's been outstanding. Yeah, he's my boy this year. On this team I've got him. The crazy part is though, my outfield is terrible, and I'm somehow afloat. I've got Joe Adell, who's picked it up lately, Conforto, Michael Harris, Luis Robert, and recently Jesus Sanchez has picked it up. But that's a terrible outfield.
Who did you say before Robert?
Michael Harris.
Oh man, that might be the worst outfield in the league, bro. Like
it is.
Michael Harris, I tweeted about him today. He's hitting behind Nick Allen. Nick Allen. Bro, Nick Allen was out of baseball. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Oh, the double lead. Oh, I forget. They want to do double leadoff with Michael Harris and Acuna. I can't. Never again with Michael Harris. But anyway, no,
I think we'll finish 2020, but I this year won't be a 5 category. Like, it won't be a batting average, I don't think. But
yeah, I don't know what to think anymore. My patience is obviously wearing thin. But that's a bad outfield.
That's a bad outfield, and I don't understand how I'm actually competing in this league with that outfield.
Yeah,
but I think it might be my pitching. I've got I picked up Noah Cameron, Liberatore, Seth Lugo, Robbie Ray, Christopher Sanchez, Nick Martinez, Clay Holmes, who we both really love this year, apparently. Michael King, Spencer Strider. So I've got enough pitching. I think it's just the offense and that's the thing right now. It's that all fantasy players, I think, should just be looking at the categories and where they can jump up. And you know what? If you're out of it in a certain category, move on from there and just try and build up those points.
So you feel like we're at the stage in the season where, like, it's okay, because I hear this question a lot. Like, what point is it okay to really start focusing on categories and honing in on these specific targets? So you think we're at a point where people should be doing that?
I think so, because I think right now we have enough of a sample to really see what these players can and can't do. And I think we're at a point now where, once we hit the month of June, where you are in the standings might be around where your team currently will end up. So if you don't start making some moves to help your deficits now, I think you're just treading water.
Yeah, I heard someone say that, and this is no disrespect to that person. I don't even remember who it was, but they were saying that it's still too early. An analyst was saying it was too early to to really start looking at that. And I
What
think
was their reasoning? Do you remember?
just because the idea that you may kind of like almost like the sense like you're playing whack-a-mole, like okay, you're gonna try to address, let's say, stolen bases, for example, but then you might start falling behind in another category, and kind of the idea that you should just kind of get the best player available, which I understand that line of thinking. I just think like for some of my leagues, I'm already looking at, like, for example, if I am like if there's like a huge gap in home runs, between, like, let's say I can jump one spot in home runs, but the next spot is, has like 20 more home runs than me in a 15 team league. It's going to be tough to make up that gap.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of, I don't know. I at least start thinking about it. I'm not going to like go crazy with it, but I think we're at the point where we can say, all right, you could look at your team and say, what is the likelihood that I'm actually going to be able to catch some people that are already may have like a really far are already far ahead in a certain category. So
Yeah, because that team's not going to stop playing. So
right.
they're still going to hit home runs, even if they don't hit as many as you, and you do start to build that, they're still going to go up as well. So I agree. You should start targeting where you can make those incremental steps, and maybe just target that.
Yeah, so I'm just pulling up my OC now. So, or like, even okay, in runs, I'm in fourth place. I have 424 runs. Person ahead of me is 426. Okay, I can definitely catch that person.
Yeah.
The people in first and second, the guy in first has, or girl, has 456 runs. Person in second has 447. So I don't know. Am I really going to catch those two people in front of me? I mean, runs maybe is not the best. Oh, here's a better example. Okay, so in home runs, I have 114. I've got two people ahead of me with 117 and 120, and then the next person up is 139.
Hmm.
So whereas with stolen bases, I have like a bunching of 6 people all within 2 stolen bases of each other. So if I'm looking at somebody on the wire, I'm going to focus on the guy who has more stolen base upside than home run upside, because I can reasonably say I can gain more points doing that.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
So long and short of it, I think it's okay to start looking at this at this point. We're about almost 40% of the way through. So
The
I think
the
we've got
hard
enough
part
data.
The hard part is these categories with like decimals and stuff like that.
The ratios can still move a lot.
Mhm.
Ratios can still move a lot. So I think that's a good, actually, thanks for bringing that up. That's I think a good distinction, because I think there's still a lot of time left for those to change. So
Yeah.
all right. We had enough on that. All right. So second place, you think this team could take it down? This is a TGFBI prep league, you said?
Yeah, it was Martin brought it up. He was putting it out there to some of his readers, I think it was, or his Substacks. So
Okay.
I joined, and yeah, it was just to get people going and get some competition and practice and stuff. So I was in second last week. I'm in sixth now. It's just, I think once I improve that outfield, which is not a winning tandem there.
You gotta upgrade there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know he's not an outfielder, but have you thought about adding Nick Allen?
I mean, he's higher up in the
I
in
mean,
the
he should be
lineup.
your priority ad.
Yeah.
We should have been taking him in the 3rd round instead of Michael Harris. Like, what were we thinking? Obviously, Brian Snicker thinks he's better. So,
Obviously.
I'll
I'll write that down for next year.
Yeah, Nick Allen, sleeper for 2026, and also pick him up in all your leagues.
Yeah.
Okay. So my best team, I've got 2 pretty good DC teams that I don't think they're overall contenders, but right now they're sitting between 100 and 200 overall. One of them is in first, one of them is in second place. So we'll start with the Skeens team. So this team I had, well, the pitching was looking nice before Luzardo blew up for the 2nd time in a row. But even besides that, I mean, I have Skeens, Mackenzie Gore, Sonny Gray, Matt Boyd, Tyler McGill, David Peterson.
Hmm.
So overall, I think my pitching has carried me. Again, that Luzardo was looking like top 25 pitcher, and all of a sudden now he has like a 1.35 whip and a 4-something ERA. So
Within a week.
that can show you, to your point earlier, ratios could really change.
Yeah.
We're still, early enough that an outing like that could really change things. This team has O'Neal Cruz, Manny Machado, who's really turned things on lately, has gotten Jackson Merrill back. Kyle Stowers is someone who I had on a lot of teams, and I think I talked about him as one of my big pickups. And yeah, I mean, he's really played like, this is someone who, where do we take him next year? Top 200, at least, right? I mean, he's doing everything. He's playing every day. All the underlying metrics look great. So he's been a big boon, someone that I got in, around pick 550. So yeah, I mean, this team is good. I don't
That's a good
know.
team.
Again, I don't see anything that's like, it's Ozzy Albies, which honestly has been a little bit of a disappointment, kind of kicking myself for taking a little too much of him this year. And do you have any Albies? Because I feel like that's, I don't know.
No, I don't. But you know me with injury. I get worried about if I read that someone had an injury last year. I get worried. So, but I didn't take him. I waited a lot on second base too. So
yeah, no, I think second base was probably the right strategy to wait at that position. It was really deep this year. The other team that I have that is in top 200 overall has Kyle Stowers as well. It's a DeGrom team. Framber, Joe Ryan, Bubich, Suarez, Hoffman. So again, like a good team, I don't think a great team.
yeah.
My hitting is Yainer Diaz, Austin Wells, Vinny P, my boy Otto Lopez, Ellie. This was a team I was telling you off air that I took Ellie over Judge. I think I'm okay with that because of the elite speed that he gives me. But man, seeing Judge what he's doing every day, kind of just as a fan, would like to have that on my team. I've got Paredes, Teoscar Hernandez, Ian Happ, Ketel Marte, Stephen Kwan. So pretty solid all around team.
Yeah.
So we'll see if Michael Conforto's on this team, and I know you said you have him on your team as well. Man, if he could ever get going, this would be a pretty nice looking squad. But we'll see. Overall, I gotta say, like, I came into the year, and maybe this was like a delusional belief, but I'm like, this is the year, man. This is the year where I feel like I'm going to challenge for an overall and, really take that step forward. I feel like every year I'm kind of building and, just gaining experience. And I think overall this year, I'm going to end up being a little disappointed because I don't see an overall, like even one that's gonna, like, I had one DC that was top 10 overall until like September last year.
I remember that. Yeah.
And this is a 5,000 team contest. I don't see that this year, and I'm a little bummed out about it. My mains, I may cash my other main, but I don't think it's a team that can actually win the league. My OC, I do one OC a year for that CLQ contest. That one is third right now, and I think could get second, but probably not going to win. So this will be a year that if I can break even financially, I'd be like, oh, okay, that would be a win given what I'm seeing at this point. So,
well, how are you doing in Fab with all those? Do you have a lot of Fab left? Like you could make some of those
not
moves,
really. Well, I think my OC is not great. My OC is like 325. My mains are between 4 and 450.
Okay.
So that's the other problem is I don't have like a hammer that I can go and say, that, like, I brought up spending on Yuri before, like, because I feel like the team might be dead, I may not just give a crap and just like blow my load on, and see if I could catch lightning in a bottle with him. But yeah, I don't have, like, I can't get some of these guys, like say a Jack this week or Mauricio, some of these big guys that are coming up. I don't think I'm in a position to really get one of the big guys. So that's the other kind of limiting factor.
Yeah.
So this has been my therapy session. Thank you for listening, Dave. But I will say one good thing. I'm going to give you an update on my Tout Wars team, which I didn't talk about.
All right.
Remember, a couple weeks ago I told you I was 0-6. Just
Mhm.
didn't know what I was doing. It's a points league, which is I've never played before. I am happy to report I am now 11-7 because you have your weekly matchup, and then you also match up like you get a win or loss against the rest of the league. So if you're above the median league score, you get a win for that week. So I'm up to 11-7 in
Hey,
that league, currently in a playoff spot, and just got Acuna back. So things are looking up there. So
never
hopefully I
give
can
up.
make a
That's
run in
great.
tout. And what's that?
Never give up. That's great, right? You were
Yeah.
down 0-6, and now
Yep. I was almost like, this team, forget about it. Just, I mean, I would never give up, right? Just advice to anybody out there. Just play it out, play it straight up, because what you do can affect the standings for other teams.
Yeah.
But I was almost like, I'll just set my lineup and, kind of forget about this one. But yeah, doing well. And really the thing is, I try to keep that mindset, whether it's with fantasy baseball or with life. Just try to take it one day at a time and do the best you can. So, all right, we're going to leave it there. Just thought it would be interesting to discuss where we're at. If you have any questions on, your teams, how you may be able to improve, maybe you're struggling in one of your leagues and trying to figure out where you can make a move or, what to do, feel free to reach out to us. We are on Twitter at FantasyBBeat. And feel free to give us a follow there and send us a message. DMs are always open. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with our mental health minute. All right, we are back with our mental health minute. So for this week, we are going to go over a couple strategies that sometimes I share with clients, depending on, who it is. Some people I already know, like they're gonna be like, this doesn't work, so maybe go in a different direction. But some clients really take to some of these strategies. So I thought I'd share them on today's episode. And these strategies are called cognitive diffusion techniques. And that sounds really fancy. But all it means is these are strategies to help you kind of detach from your thoughts. We talked a few weeks ago about cognitive distortions and how many of us develop these kind of distorted ways of thinking. Oftentimes, it could be a combination of our early experiences. Some of us are just kind of genetically wired in a way to maybe think a certain way. And, I talked about just kind of paying attention to how you're thinking, because the way that you're thinking affects your behavior, right? It affects the way you feel. If you're telling yourself really negative things on a consistent basis, well, what's going to happen to your mood, right? Your mood is going to suffer. If you're telling yourself, I don't know, I suck, I'm a failure, whatever, some of these like negative, um, stories that we can tell ourselves, then yeah, you're not going to feel good. So we talked about kind of reframing last week and looking at things through a different lens. But sometimes I find that when you struggle, like when you get engaged in this battle, like trying to push away a thought, sometimes it gets a little bit louder. Do you know what I'm saying, Dave? Like sometimes, like if you really like, you almost give it more power when you do that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I think like when clients that I work with, like they really struggle with kind of reframing thoughts and just forgetting thoughts, it's helpful to learn some of these strategies that help them to almost have more of like an accepting stance towards their thoughts, and not become so fused with them. So one technique that I think has been really helpful is this idea of almost imagining your thought is kind of like being like those big puffy white clouds that they're just, you look up and you see them just slowly passing by in the sky, like almost envisioning your thoughts being like that, like a big puffy white cloud. It's not going to hurt you, because sometimes we get so like we have such an emotional reaction to our thoughts. So like, let's say, I don't know, give me like a negative thought that you may have, or a thought that you think kind of causes you anxiety, or, gets you in a bad mood. You have any examples, Dave?
Maybe like a body image. You think poorly about yourself and the way you look.
Right. Okay. So maybe, I'm talking about myself. My nose is too big, right? And it's like, I look in the mirror like, oh, look at this huge schnoz, man. Like, what what am I doing with this? And let's say that's something that recurs and bothers me, like, oh, I'm just my nose is so ugly, rather than like going down the rabbit hole with those thoughts and like, oh, what are people thinking? And, really like dissecting it, just like noticing when that thought happens and almost just like envisioning it as this cloud passing by in the sky. Just a cloud. It's not, I don't have to react to it. I don't have to do anything with it. It's just passing by. It's not going to hurt me. I had a client who really, like, every time, like, he had like these thoughts about his past, and every time these thoughts would come up, he'd get like really hooked on them, and it would mess up his entire day. So he learned to, when he got the thought, first notice it, right? That's not always easy to even notice that you're having it. But first notice the thought, and he'd do this exercise where he would imagine like he was putting the thought on a leaf that's just floating by in a stream. And it's just like, this is it. It's just like, it's almost like a peaceful image, and the thought is just going by, and we don't have to pay attention to it. We don't have to give it more energy. It's just there, So does that make sense?
Yeah, it's almost like it's there, but it doesn't have to always be there. It can just
It
be
doesn't have to consume you, right?
Yeah,
It can
exactly.
just
It's
be
it's not where you are. You're here.
Mhm.
That's the thing, and it's gone. It just
Right,
goes away because it's just
right.
a thought. It's not. It might not be reality.
It might not be a reality. It doesn't have to be part of you. It's just like, it's, again, this idea of just detaching from it.
Hmm.
Which for a lot of us, it's very hard to do, and it's a very intentional thing that we need to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just one example. Another, like, I have this worksheet pulled up here. Imagine your thoughts projected onto a large movie screen. Sit in the back row and watch the scenes unfold. Can you just observe the movie without getting lost in it? So again, this idea of detaching from the thought, not being so consumed in it, or being stuck to it.
Yeah.
It's just, you're just like a passive observer. Oh, here's that thought again. Here's this thought again. Then I got, my nose is too big, or, I'm ugly, or whatever it is. Another one is called name the story. Think of repetitive thoughts as familiar stories. Pay attention to how often they recur. You might spot the I'm a failure story, the no one likes me story, or the my life is horrible story. So like, almost like putting a label to, like, like almost, I don't know if we're gonna just continue with this example, like, oh, there's the my nose is too big story, or I'm ugly, there we go again, and kind of just like trivializing it rather than getting stuck in it.
Like an episode of a TV show. Is that what you're
Like,
trying to say?
yeah, here we go. Oh, look what's on today. The, I look stupid, or I look ugly, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
just kind of making it, like, giving it less power, than it needs to have. So, uh, let's see if there's anything else. Zoom out. The strategy says, when you're fused with a thought, picture yourself rising high above the earth. Notice how tiny your worries look from space. Does your triggering thought feel as significant from this distance? So I think you're getting the idea, like, just this idea of, number one, noticing your thoughts, but not getting attached to them, and really consciously trying to distance yourself so that your thinking doesn't, if they're negative thoughts, obviously, if they don't have such an impact on your mood and the way that you feel. So hopefully people can take something away from that. But we're going to leave it there for today. We'll be back, I think, next week. We'll have the three of us back on.
Hmm.
And then we've got, Mike's been doing a great job getting guests lined up for the following weeks. So we'll have some great writers on, and be getting some good fantasy baseball related information. So thank you so much for listening. I am Chris Torres for Dave Funnell. You've been listening to the Fantasy Baseball Beat.